Have you ever wished to be someone unshakable, someone who doesn't care about criticism, rejection, loss, or betrayal? Have you ever dreamed of the day when you will finally stop feeling that silent pain, that anguish that eats you up inside, even when you pretend to be fine on the outside? Maybe you're tired of trying to please everyone, of maintaining an image that requires strength all the time, when in reality all you wanted was to rest, just for a moment, from the pressure of being untouchable. But let me tell you something that perhaps no one has had the courage to say. As long as you try to avoid pain, it will continue to control you. As long as you try to numb yourself, to protect yourself, to hide, you will remain a hostage to everything that happens around you. The words that hurt you, the actions that disappoint you, the silences that suffocate you inside. And this is not weakness. This is the reality for most people. The difference is that some pretend better than others. Carl Jung, one of the greatest names in depth psychology, said that we are not what happens to us, but what we choose to become. And that is where the key lies. It is not about shielding yourself from the world. It is not about becoming cold, indifferent, or untouchable. It is about integrating. It is about bringing to light everything that currently affects you in the dark. Because true strength is not the absence of pain. It is the full awareness of who you are, even when you are bleeding. If you've made it this far, it's not by chance. This message is for you, who are tired of hurting yourself with everything and everyone. It is for you, who feel that you are always at an emotional disadvantage, as if other people have a power over you that you don't understand. I want to show you that it doesn't have to be this way. But for that, you will have to face some truths that may hurt, and perhaps, for the first time, this pain will set you free. Let's get started. You believe that what hurts you is out there, in the actions of others, in poorly chosen words, in the abandonments you have suffered, in the betrayals you did not expect. But the truth is brutal. None of this really has the power to hurt you unless there is already an open wound inside you. What hurts you is not what others do to you. It is what these experiences activate within you. It is the story you tell yourself about it. It is the old trauma that has never been addressed. It is the emptiness you disguise with strength, with pride, with that desperate need to seem well-adjusted. Jung shows us that the pain we feel in the face of the external world is merely a reflection of what has not yet been integrated into our internal world. That is why some people can go through devastating situations and still maintain clarity, while others crumble in the face of a simple comment. It is not about what happens, it is about where it hits you. And here comes an uncomfortable truth. You still suffer so much because, on some level, you believe you can control how the world should treat you. You are still trying to be good enough, strong enough, smart enough, deserving enough, as if these guarantees could protect you from being hurt. You try to be good enough, smart enough, strong enough, understanding enough, as if that could guarantee that no one would ever hurt you. But control is an illusion. And as long as you cling to it, you will live in constant tension, trying to predict the unpredictable, trying to avoid the inevitable. Do you want to stop suffering? Then stop protecting yourself from suffering. What you need is not more control, but more awareness. As long as you believe that people need to change for you to stop feeling pain, you will remain enslaved by the actions of others. Your freedom begins the moment you understand that everything coming from outside only has power if it finds an echo within you. And this is exactly where the true battlefield lies. The unconscious. What you do not see, do not understand, and do not master masters you. And this is what we will explore in the next part. Get ready to dive one level deeper, because that is where true transformation begins. If this message resonates with you, subscribe and stay with me, because we're only just beginning. The biggest lie you've been told is that you are in control of your life. Wake up, because you're not. At least not as long as you continue living on autopilot, reacting without knowing why, feeling without understanding where it comes from, making decisions that you later sabotage. Carl Jung made this clear when he said, "Until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life, and you will call it fate." And that is exactly what's happening to you right now. The pain you feel, the anger that erupts out of nowhere, the sadness that invades you without warning. None of this is random. They are messages coming from parts of you that have been forgotten, ignored, repressed. Jung referred to this dark territory as the unconscious. It is not just a cloud of vague thoughts. It is an active force, an entire system of memories, traumas, desires, and fears that you do not want to face, but that continue to decide what you feel and how you act. You wonder why certain words destroy you while others remain indifferent. It's because those words touch sensitive points within you that are still alive. And if they are alive, it's because you've never confronted them. You've only pushed them under the psychological rug, and now you keep tripping over them. Jung said, "We cannot change anything until we accept it. Condemnation does not liberate, it oppresses." And what have you been doing? You've been judging yourself, repressing yourself, silencing yourself, as if that would solve anything. But the truth is, the unconscious doesn't disappear just because you ignore it. It simply finds more dangerous ways to manifest, in toxic relationships that you repeat, in patterns of self-sabotage that you can't seem to break, in anxieties and fears that rise up just when everything seems to be going well. This isn't bad luck. It's your unconscious trying to wake you up, but you keep insisting on sleeping. Do you want to be someone who no longer gets hurt so easily? Then stop running away from what's inside you. Because as long as you do not know your unconscious, you will remain a puppet of your emotions. And the more you try to protect yourself from external pain, the more vulnerable you become to internal pain. The more you try to protect yourself from external pain, the more vulnerable you become to internal pain. But there is a way out, and it is not in defending yourself. It is in integrating yourself. Becoming untouchable is not an act of resistance. It is an act of deep knowledge. This is what we will explore next. What does it truly mean to be someone who is unshaken? And why does the strength not come from armor, but from acceptance? Most people believe that the only way to avoid getting hurt is by closing themselves off. They build walls, create masks, develop emotional armor, and pretend that nothing affects them. They say, "I don't care anymore. I couldn't care less. Nothing gets to me." But inside, they continue to bleed. They keep corroding because the problem was never about feeling. The problem is not knowing what you are feeling and why. This only happens to those who do not yet know themselves. Jung was precise when he stated, "Know all the theories, master all the techniques, but when touching a human soul, be just another human soul." And that human soul you insist on hiding behind a strong, invulnerable, controlled character, it is screaming to be seen. Becoming emotionally strong has nothing to do with being cold. It has nothing to do with ignoring pain, avoiding conflict, or pretending not to care. It has everything to do with integrating, with accepting, with bringing to light everything you have buried in the dark. You do not become untouchable by creating a barrier between yourself and the world. You become untouchable when you realize that no one can touch what has already been embraced within you. When you integrate your shadows, your fears, your flaws, your insecurities, you stop reacting to everything you observe. You choose. You are no longer an emotional puppet. And that is true freedom. Jung called this individuation the process of becoming who you truly are, not who others expect you to be, not who you thought you should be to be accepted, but what emerges from within, from the meeting of light and shadow between ego and unconscious. Individuation is not a process of perfection, Jung said, but of integration. You do not need to become a better person. You just need to become whole. Here is the secret that no one told you. The more you run from pain, the more it chases you. The more you try not to be affected, the more fragile you become. But when you face your own wounds, when you accept who you are, with all that is beautiful and ugly, noble and shameful, nothing outside has the power to dismantle you. However, this path requires courage. Courage to look within. Courage to abandon the masks. Courage to feel. Because it is precisely in pain that the key to transformation is hidden. And that is what we will discover in the next part. How suffering, far from being an enemy, can become the gateway to your true strength. Let's dive deeper, this time without fear. You learned to hate pain since you were little. You were taught that suffering is a sign of weakness, that crying is a waste of time, that feeling too much makes you vulnerable. And so, you began to run, to avoid, to deny. But the more you flee from suffering, the more it chases you. And the worst part? Changes form. It disguises itself as anxiety, anger, apathy, boredom, and self-destructive impulses that you do not even understand. You do not know where they come from. Ignored pain does not disappear. It just digs tunnels inside you until one day, without warning, everything collapses. Jung saw suffering in a completely different way. He believed that pain was the messenger of the alarm of the unconscious, the language that the self, what you are in your entirety, uses to get your attention. Jung said, "Depression is like a lady in black. If she appears, do not push her away. Invite her to sit down, offer her a coffee, and listen to what she has to say." But what do we do instead? We silence ourselves. We distract ourselves. We keep busy. We numb ourselves. We do everything to avoid looking at what truly matters. What is this pain trying to show you? The truth is that suffering only hurts so much because you are still at war with yourself. There is a part of you that wants to grow, and another part that wants to keep everything as it is. There is something inside you that cries out for transformation, but your ego, accustomed to control, tries to suffocate that call. It is in this friction that pain is born, because change hurts. Growth hurts. Letting go of old beliefs, cutting toxic ties, allowing what no longer serves you to die. All of this is a form of mourning, an internal process of death and rebirth. But it is precisely in this space of ruin that something new can be born. When everything in you is deconstructed, when certainties crumble, when pain lays bare your vulnerability, you can finally see who you truly are, without the layers of protection, without the performance, without the mask. At that exact point, suffering becomes sacred, because it brings you to your knees before the only thing that can set you free, yourself. Jung knew this. He understood that suffering is not a failure of the system. It is part of the process. Pain is not the end of the road. It is the beginning of the journey toward individuation. The problem is that most people give up before crossing that dark valley. They flee. They distract themselves. They return to the surface. But not you. If you have made it this far, it is because you are ready to cross. In the next part, we will explore how this crossing unfolds, how the path of individuation, no matter how lonely and brutal it may seem, is what finally sets you free. Few people have the courage to begin the journey of individuation, and even fewer have the courage to complete it. This path does not promise comfort. It does not offer guarantees. It does not protect your ego, it destroys it. Jung referred to individuation as the process of becoming who you truly are. But this requires, above all, unlearning what you think you are. And that hurts more than any external rejection, because you start to realize that much of what defined you until now was an illusion. You are not your achievements. You are not your traumas. You are not the image you constructed to be loved, respected, or admired. All of this was created to survive. But surviving is not living. Individuation is life's call beyond survival. It is when the unconscious begins to push everything that has been repressed, hidden, and distorted to the surface. Individuation requires the dissolution of the persona. Jung wrote that it is merely a mask of collective convenience. In other words, you will need to tear off your own skin to discover what lies beneath. It is in this process that you begin to become untouchable, not because nothing affects you anymore, but because you have already gone through the fire. You have faced your monsters. You have looked into the eyes of your shame, your neediness, your anger, and said, "I see you, and you no longer control me." It is this internal clarity, this lucidity in the face of your own darkness, that gives you a strength that does not depend on approval, recognition, or control. You no longer need to be loved by everyone. You no longer need to win every argument. You no longer need to appear strong, soul. Because you know who you are and no one can take that away from you. True emotional armor is not a shell, it is a core. It is the integration of all your parts into a center of consciousness that remains unshaken in the face of storms. You may feel pain, but it does not break you. You may be hurt, but you do not lose yourself because you have stopped being reactive and have become whole. You have stopped living on the surface and have begun to inhabit the depths. However, this depth comes at a price. Loneliness. Not because you will be alone, but because few people can accompany you on this journey. Most are still trapped on the surface, behind masks, in fear of feeling. When you begin to free yourself, you inevitably distance yourself, But this distancing is not rejection. It is maturation. You do not distance yourself out of pride. You distance yourself because you no longer fit where you once hid. This brings us to the final point of this journey. Consciousness as a shield. Because it is not strength that protects you, it is clarity. This is what we will discuss in the last part. Consciousness as the only state in which nothing, absolutely nothing, has more power over you. Let's finish this crossing together. We are almost there. Now that you've made it this far, there is something that needs to be said very clearly. Nothing, absolutely nothing, will shield you from external suffering if you remain unconscious of what happens within you. Words will continue to hurt. Rejections will continue to sting. Losses will keep bringing you down until you awaken. Awakening is not a magical event. It is a daily choice. It is looking within even when it hurts. It is taking responsibility for everything you feel, without blaming others, the past, or fate. Carl Jung said, "What you resist persists. What you accept transforms." You have spent your whole life resisting. The fear of not being enough, the emptiness of rejection, the pain of loneliness, the anguish of not feeling seen. But what did you do with that? You hid. You silenced yourself. You tried to control everything. You tried to be perfect. You tried to be strong. And all of this has brought you here, exhausted, tired of fighting against the world and against yourself. But now you know true emotional immunity is not hardness, it is clarity. It is not about creating armor. It is about expanding your awareness. Because when you understand your triggers, your patterns, your wounds, the actions of others lose the power to destroy you. You still feel, but you don't drown. You still suffer, but you don't lose yourself, and that changes everything. What shields you is not protecting yourself from life. It is diving into it deeply. Those who live on the surface get hurt by any wave. Those who dive know that there is silence, stability, and power down below. And that is where you're headed. When you start to live from that place of integration, presence, and acceptance, the world may try to knock you down, but it no longer finds where to hit you. If this video touched you in some way, if something within you has awakened, write in the comments, "I choose awareness." Let's start a movement of people who no longer want to survive by pretending to be strong, but to live with truth. And don't forget, the next video is also part of this journey. It's important. You need to keep going. Real transformation only begins when you don't stop at the first step. See you there.